So, it's first off, how many have been affected by some type of storm, tornadoes, hurricane? Quite a few of you. Well, in my career, I did a lot of response. I've responded to, hurricanes and tornadoes. I'll tell you something, it's a little different when you're on the other end of that. January 12th, 23, I'm on the way back from a class, from an RX class, and I get a phone call from GMA. Says, "Hey, we need your IMT team and SAW teams." And I'm like, "Okay, where?" I said, "I'll get them started." And they're like, "Spalding County." I'm like, "Where?" And she's like, "Spalding County." I says, "No, where?" And she says, "Here." I says, "That's my house." I says, "I will have somebody respond to you." And I spent the next 2.5 hours trying to get a hold of family and didn't get a hold of them until I was 12 miles from the house. And then I had to crawl through about 1.5 miles of trees to get to the house. So it's a totally different, I have a total enough another respect when you're on the receiving end. So when I put this together, it's like, ooh, kind of brings back some sore memories here. Post-storm burning, is it a hurricane? Maybe tornadoes or straight line winds. All of those affect us in different ways. And in our state, we are susceptible to all of them, to different varying events. I mean, we have had two major hurricanes in the last 5, 6 years now, and then tornadoes. It seems like, every season we're seeing more and more tornadoes. And then anytime you have a strong thunderstorm, we have a potential for straight line winds that could cause us an effect. So after the storm, what do? You've got this mess out there. You've got all these trees down, and it's overwhelming. That morning after I got to my house and it was dark. I mean, I knew I was crawling over trees to get to the house. And the next morning, and I wake up and I look out every window and it's nothing but treetops. So what do you do? Where do you start? Well, hopefully first maybe you can get a logging crew. That's the ultimate. Maybe you can get a logging crew in there to help you out. Typically now you've got probably about maybe about 8 months. I think I talked to some of our foresters the other day, and they said most of the mills are starting to wind down their hurricane debris cleanup. Because what happens is there's a time limit on that before the blue stem gets in there. So they've got that issue. Maybe hardwoods a little bit longer for that cleanup. But if you can't get a logging crew in there, what do? You do a burn, prescribed burn. Man, a lot of people are like, "You want me to burn that? Really?" Yeah, really. We want you to burn it. If you can't clean it up, then try to do a burn on it. You heard Chris talk about earlier about the fact that our fire size has gone up. Well, I'm, it's probably been, I guess I've been out of the field now for 12 years now. So about 13 years ago, we had a big tornado that came through my county again from one end to the other. The Rangers are still dealing with that tornado debris where it's all messed up and it's just a mangled mess, and you can't get a dozer through there, and you've got limbs that are trying to come through the cab and everything else like that. But if you could fireproof your property for a couple of years, how much benefit would that be? It'd be huge for you, for the fire risk, for the firefighters that down the road have to fight fire in there. So let's look at a couple of things with that. Oh, wait a minute. This is what people think they're going to get when they burn storm damage. High intensity, high severity. No, this is what we're trying to avoid. We're looking at high intensity, low severity. Man, there's not a lot of difference. Well, there's actually quite a bit of difference in there. That's unplanned. This is planned, and we're choosing those conditions in which we want to burn. Yes, there may be some scorch in the overstory where, as a normal prescribed fire, we wouldn't want to do that. But if I can remove the 1 hour and some 10-hour fuels I've just fireproofed that property for a couple of years until I can decide what I'm going to do. Can I can I finally get somebody in there to clean it up? You know, so this is kind of a challenge to you. And I'll say a challenge is more of, hey, consider this. Because a lot of people won't even consider burning in storm debris. Yeah, they just think the risk is too high. But if you know going into it that this is what you're going to get, this is the kind of fire behavior you're going to get, but the results is going to be the fact that I'm going to avoid getting this, that's a huge benefit. So let's look at some of the conditions which we want to look at if we're going to do that burning. You're going to look for an extended wet period, followed by a dry front that brings low humidity and good winds. Why? I don't really want to burn deep in the duff. I don't want those trees themselves to burn. I don't want those 100-hour, 1,000-hour, 10,000-hour fuels to burn. I'm just looking to remove those 1-hour and 10-hour fuels. Now, that's all I'm looking to burn. I'm trying just to fireproof, give myself a couple of years. If there's an overstory, say you lost some trees, but you still have a stand out there that you want to protect, then I'm going to be on the cooler side. I'm probably looking at a dormant season burn because we are going to have that intensity. We're going to have that intensity. So I want to protect that crown. If you don't have a crown out there, if there's not a canopy out there, let her rip. You know, humidities 25 to 40, but a KVDI 50 to 200. I want good moisture in that duff layer, but I want it good and dry so that I can have a wind that's going to push that through there. So what are we talking about as far as firing techniques? I'll step back. I'm sorry. Needles and brown leaves mostly still attached. You don't want the needles dropped off and on the ground. You want them hanging because, again, I'm looking at the ground moisture being wet. I'm looking at all of this trees that are down. I want them to be brown because they're going to dry out faster, and I'm going to be able to skim a fire across the top, remove those 1 and 10-hour fuels while not disturbing the stuff that's on the ground. So sometimes head fire is best. Man. Storm debris, head fires, dry condition. No, remember, we're talking about KVDI is going to be wet. We're just talking about humidity is dry that day. So what we're going to look at is a series of pictures from a paper that came out several years ago on burning. Some research was done in Hugo damage. So this is a 2-year rough, Hurricane Hugo. And they're looking at removing the 1-hour and the 10-hour fuel. So you look at this is a very typical picture of maybe the season after, maybe 6 months, 8 months after a storm. So they burned it. You get the intensity, So you're going in here with stripped head fires and you're burning this, and that's the result. You remove those 1 and 10-hour fuels and you just fireproof that property for a while. Now, granted, eventually you're going to have to deal with this one way or the other. And as a smoke management guy, I'm going, ooh, that's a smoke management problem down the road. But at least for a couple of years, I'm good. At least for a couple of years, I'm good. So here's another one. Here's more a little bit lighter. Intensity. You're going to get that intensity. Results. One more. Really intense. And the results. Again, 1 in 10-hour fuels is what we're trying to remove. So the challenges. Well, we're going to strip head fires. Somebody's got to walk through the middle of that. And that's probably one of the biggest things that we're looking at is how do you do that safely? I teach the class and when I get to the prescribed fire class and when I get to the safety section, I say the number one rule is everybody goes home safe. I don't care how much extra gets burned. I don't care what happens if you go home safe. Well, how safe are we going to be in there? That's a risk. That's a risk. But strip head fires, putting that through there is what it's going to take. You're not going to be able to go to one side of the property and just let it rip through the other side. I mean, that's just not something that you're going to be able to do because the intensity going towards that other end is probably your fire breaks are not going to hold unless you're going into another burn, a field, something like that. Strip head fires increase the potential for spotting. the potential for it to go across your brake. So if you are using them, a strip head fire, just make sure you got those good downwind, get down range fire breaks that are good. And typically, when burning storm debris, we're looking at about 18 months after the event to 24 months at the most, maybe on some hardwoods. And the reason being is once all those needles drop or the bark starts slipping. And when I say that is once that bark starts slipping, that bole, that tree is now susceptible to catching an ember. And now we start looking at setting those on fire and causing a smoke related problem. So we're trying to fireproof that property 1 to 2 years after, and then get us another couple of years of fireproofing. So one of the game changers right here. I'm trying to avoid this over here on your left there, that guy walking through the middle. And this is the game changer right here. Now we don't have to go through the middle. Now, not everybody has the advantage of having one of these, but I see this in we've been at our table talking about the drones, and I see this as a game changer for a lot of events. But during storm debris, burning storm debris, I think this right here is going to be a tool that we're going to see a lot use of, because now you can get internal without having to put somebody internal. So this is going to be one of the game changers for burning storm debris. So here's the reference material the study came off of from Delway, James Forbes, and James Sutherland. Just a photo series of the fire behavior in storm debris. So if you're interested in burning storm debris, this is a resource that you can look up online, get a hold of it, and talk to you about fire behavior. So a couple of things happened this week. So I had a little bonus slide in here. As of the 10th, so last year I sat up here and I talked about how great last year was. You heard Chris talk about the hurricane. Man, that took most of federal, state agencies out of burning. Then we had this spring burn season, wildfire season, that took a lot of our folks out of burning. This year, as of the 10th, 1,459,720. That's the 10th busiest burn season in the last 31 years. So for everything that went on, I think that was an exceptional year. All you out there that did some burning, exceptional job. I got a challenge for you. Give me 10 more thousand so we can move up a little bit. But look at this. Look at the number of permits. Look at the number of permits. This was the 10th busiest year for burning, but it's the 3rd busiest in the number of permits issued. I suspect that by the time this month is over, we will get another 200 permits, so we'll move into 2nd place with that. So it's very busy. And a bonus to the bonus that happened last night is that after a year and a half, our Georgia smoke management plan was finally finalized. We have all of our signatures, and it went on our website today as the updated smoke management plan for the state of Georgia. All right, that's it. Thank you. Thank you.